It's the year 198X. In a dimly lit cell, a single bulb casts an eerie glow above the prisoner's head. Chains bind his hands, turning his battered body as he bears the painful aftermath of relentless torture. Even his feet are tightly bound, rendering him powerless. A persistent fly, feasting on his blood, crawls across his face. Yet he remains remarkably composed despite his mounting irritation. After enduring extensive interrogation and suffering, the prisoner finally speaks his first word, food. The head officer is taken aback by this unexpected request. One of the interrogators remarks that the South Korean army doesn't cater to spies, but the prisoner pleads for sustenance, willing to confess everything if they provide him with a meal as he's starving. The head officer inquires if he is serious, and the prisoner confirms his willingness. A deal is struck, food in exchange for information about his objectives and infiltration route. The prisoner explains that he joined the army in pursuit of survival, but his current predicament threatens to leave him starving to death. The head officer instructs a subordinate to fetch food from the kitchen. The subordinate hesitates, but is met with the head officer's anger, prompting him to comply. The head officer emphasizes the urgency of extracting information, warning that their superiors will claim credit if they fail. The prisoner is released from his restraints and served a meal. With his hands still chained, he uses the spoon to taste the soup, remarking that it lacks flavor. He proceeds to pick up a pair of chopsticks, noting that military food consistently falls short in taste. A subordinate insists that taste is irrelevant. They need information. Suddenly, the prisoner transforms the chopstick into a deadly weapon, swiftly impaling the head officer. Initially confused, the head officer collapses, dead. The soldiers are stunned by the swift and inconspicuous turn of events. The prisoner emphasizes the importance of food's taste as he holds the remaining chopstick. The torturers rush to attack him, but he skillfully dispatches them all with a single chopstick. He introduces himself as Do Jongen, a senior intelligence sergeant, revealing his infiltration route as swimming through the ocean. His ultimate goal was to eliminate them, just as he did. Spotting the fly that had been irritating him earlier, he takes aim with the chopstick and swiftly dispatches it. Sometime later, Do Jongen finds himself in Seoul City, seated with Lieutenant Colonel Park in a small restaurant. The sergeant informs him that nobody in their unit is quite like him. Why does he contemplate leaving? Jongen responds that the military grub has lost its flavor, but it sure looks appetizing here. The sergeant grins and tosses the meat chunks into the broth, handing the rest to Jongen. Jongen selects a piece with his chopsticks and mentions he doesn't eat like Park. He takes small scoops of rice, adding it to the soup gradually to savor the meal without making the leftover rice soggy. As he eats, Park inquires if he's considering leaving because of that mission. Jongen questions why Park is asking, as he just returned from completing the recent assignment. Park explains that Jongen knows precisely which mission he's referring to, and emphasizes that the plan was to return alive, and he didn't fail when he came back alone. Jongen clarifies it's not about that mission. After a brief pause, he expresses gratitude to Park for supporting him and helping him make a living. Park assures him he did everything right, and hopes Jongen's talents will be recognized even after he departs. 1 year later, at a construction site, two co-workers comment on Jongen's efficiency in carrying heavy loads and digging. During the lunch break, Jongen heads to the bank. There, he notices a girl at the counter assisting an elderly woman. She glances his way and he waves at her with a smile. It all began a year ago when he joined the construction company. When he received his first paycheck, the owner advised him to save for the future, knowing it would help him achieve his goals. However, at the time, he wasn't sure what those goals were. Nevertheless, he visited the nearest bank during his lunch breaks and opened an account. On that day, he saw Siona for the first time and fell in love with her instantly. Since then, he started visiting the bank daily during lunch to catch a glimpse of her. He learned she came from a low-income family and started working there right after high school. She inquired if he hadn't saved any money during his military service. He explained that he had saved money but had given it to the families of fallen soldiers. Now he's working hard again to save more money. Today, he's back to deposit some money into his savings account. She suggests he deposits money monthly to avoid the hassle, but he insists it's fine this way because he gets to see her every day. This became his reason to live well, but still, he struggles to live well. He listens to the news on TV while lying on the sofa at home. He reflects on his past and the time he matured, diligently training in various popular skills and completing challenging missions. Suddenly, a knock sounds at his door. He inquires about the visitor's identity. The individual asks if he's First Sergeant Du. Cracking the door open slightly, he presses for more information. The person introduces themselves as Joe Tae-moon, a former colleague. Jong-gon is surprised to see Tae-moon impeccably dressed and sporting an expensive watch. He questions how Tae-moon managed to locate him. Tae-moon explains he scoured everywhere until he finally tracked him down. Tae-moon informs Jongen of a job opportunity. Curious, Jangin inquires about the nature of the job. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What's your favorite school-related manhwa? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Taemoon clarifies that it's something he excels at, but reassures him it doesn't involve harm to anyone. Instead, he needs Jongin to impart a valuable lesson to someone. Jongin grows serious and asks for complete honesty regarding the task. Taemoon confesses to being a successful entrepreneur in the public eye, but reveals his true identity as the leader of a gang. The person he wants Jangin to deal with is the head of another group. Jangin firmly states that he left his military career to avoid such activities. Taemoon questions Jonggon's decision and asks if he left the army to live a life like this, doing construction work in such a place. Jonggon advises him to be cautious with his words. Taemoon entices him with a tempting offer of 50 million won, suggesting it could help him secure a better home or start a business for a brighter future. Jangin considers that he wouldn't be able to save that much even after 10 years of construction work. Taemoon hands him his business card and encourages him to visit if he changes his mind. Before departing, he remarks on the peculiarity of someone like Jangin, avoiding the very work he excels at. Jongin places the card on the side table. As he lies on the floor, he contemplates his presence here and decides to persist a little longer to see if he truly can't resist returning to his skill. Lost in thought, he eventually falls asleep. The following day at the construction site, numerous stacks of cement bags await him. His boss instructs him to move all the bags where they're needed. Jongin questions the whereabouts of his fellow workers. The boss explains that he only called him because he'd seen him handle heavy loads the other day and believed he could manage this task alone. Jangin gazes at his boss's cheerful expression, wondering if he's serious. Meanwhile, Shiona and her co-worker enjoy tea while standing outside the bank. She gazes up at the sky and wonders how he will manage today. Her co-worker inquires why she's pondering this. Her face always brightens up at lunchtime. Shiona asks what she's referring to. Her co-worker explains that she's kind to Jangin. It appears she's interested in him. Shiona suggests he'll save money during lunch break. If this were a shop, he'd be a regular customer, so she should treat him well. Her co-worker agrees, saying Jangin might be more attractive and wealthy. This remark makes Shiona uneasy. She smiles and mentions he might not be handsome, but has a strong physique. Her co-worker responds that he works at a construction site, lifting bricks and heavy loads all day. Shiona says her father worked at a construction site, but never had a body like his. She leans in and thinks she should mind her own business and stay out of hers. She warns her that she knows about her affair with that condescending manager. While sitting at her desk, she wonders why she got upset earlier talking about Jongin. Suddenly, he enters the bank and waves at her. She asks why he's there before lunch break. He explains that he'll be busy later and came a bit early. She asks if he's there to deposit money. He says he just came to see her because he's going somewhere. She tries to grasp what he means. He waves goodbye and mentions he'll deposit a significant amount when he returns. Her cheeks turn red, thinking he came just to see her. He grabs a ticket to Daesan and boards a bus to meet Taemoon. While on the bus, he looks at a business card, thinking things might improve if he goes through with it. Taemoon and his driver are already waiting when he arrives in Daesan. In the car, Taemoon shows a photo of their target, Park Gwanho. He explains they're both vying for control of the tourist hotel's slot machines. According to the rules, he can't confront Park directly, or he'll lose the rights. But if an outsider, unrelated to their feud, suddenly steps in, things can proceed smoothly, and he can secure those rights. He cautions Jangin that it won't be easy, as Park expects him and has strong security. He suggests waiting until Park lowers his guard. Janggon asks for the time. Taemoon is startled by the question. It says it's past 12:30. Janggon notes that there's plenty of time until 4:30 p.m., as the banks are now closed. He requests his assistants to escort him to the park for a quick favor. Afterward, Taemoon can deposit funds into his bank account before the banks shut down. Taemoon expresses concern that going now may lead to a confrontation with the park's security personnel. Jangin believes it shouldn't be a problem. Taemoon accompanies him to the hotel, where Park and his associates are having lunch. He also cautions him about Park's ever-present special guard. That individual used to be a wrestler. Jonggon inquires about the restaurant's best dish. The driver informs him that the signature dish here is their fried dumplings. Jonggon mentions he'll return shortly and exits the vehicle. Park is enjoying his meal with his underlings nearby. Jangin sits alone in a corner with a plate of fried dumplings in front of him. He mixes soy sauce and vinegar in equal parts in a bowl and adds powdered red pepper. He dips the dumplings and savors the flavor. After finishing his meal and giving thanks, he hurls the glass toward Park, shattering it against the wall. A rotund man questions his actions. Jangin explains that he's provoking a fight due to his boss's noisy eating. Park looks at him strangely and orders his men to confront him. They charge toward Yangon, resulting in a scene of scattered food, broken furniture, and injured men strewn across the floor. Yangon remains standing, hands in his pockets, while Park leans against the damaged wall. Park asks who Yangon is, puzzled that he wasn't aware of someone as powerful as him in their field. Yangon responds, suggesting Park might remember him as an outsider with anger management issues. He smirks, blood trickling from his nose, and asks who sent him. Park offers to double his payment if he collaborates with him. Yangon contemplates whether this man has enough money to pay him twice the agreed-upon amount. Park understands that he's being compensated generously. He says it doesn't matter because Yangon interrupts, asking him why he stopped talking. Suddenly, he senses someone behind him, the rotund man holding a weapon ready to strike. Yangon defends himself with his arms when the man attacks, feeling a sharp pain as if something inside him has broken. He retaliates with a quick kick between the man's legs, causing him to fall in agony and lose consciousness. Tears stream down Yangon's face from the pain. Yangon looks at Park and asks if it's already 4:30 p.m. Park checks his watch and informs him that it's not even 2 p.m. Yangon says it's perfect and walks away. Yangon and Taemoon exit the bank after depositing money into Yangon's account. Taemoon expresses surprise that they made it before the bank's closing time. He inquires about Yangon's plans for the money. Yangon replies that he's uncertain but noticed some apartments near the bus terminal in the morning and might consider buying one. Taemoon suggests looking for an apartment in a better neighborhood in the middle of Seoul. Yangon considers trying his hand at stocks, as many people do these days. Taemoon asks if he has a specific store in mind. He suggests that going to Han Electronics is a good idea, because a company responsible for providing electricity to the entire nation is unlikely to go bankrupt. Yangon suggests Sam Electronics, citing the intelligence of the new company chairman. Suddenly, a sharp pain strikes him, feeling like an electric shock. He requests a hospital visit due to the pain where he was hit. Taemoon mentions they can go to the hospital he frequents. Yangon inquires about the frequency. He responds that there's an experienced doctor who isn't surprised when he shows up after injuries. Both arms are casted, leaving him puzzled. The doctor informs him that his arms are fractured. The fractures will take a month to heal. Yangon asks in surprise if he has to endure this for a whole month. The doctor advises him against using his arms to avoid delaying the healing process. Yangon isn't pleased with his predicament. Taemoon teases him, suggesting that someone will face difficulties from now on. They head to a bar and have a drink. Yangon feels good, but questions whether he can drink in this condition. Taemoon asks if he's forgotten their method of using alcohol for healing wounds. Yangon chuckles, mentioning it's been a while since he heard that line. They continue drinking and reminiscing about their army days when they worked together. Taemoon expresses how he always knew Yangon was strong, but didn't anticipate him defeating so many people so quickly, especially in a bare-handed fight. He also admits to having prepared weapons just in case. Yangon inquires about how he obtained the weapons. While pouring more whiskey, Taemoon casually mentions that shotguns are easy to find, but he smuggles pistols from Russia. Yangon remarks that he's found a fitting job, to which Taemoon replies that the army suited him better. He asks why Yangon left his previous job in the special forces. He turns melancholic and mentions that he and 3 colleagues took part in a mission, but he's the only survivor. Taemoon is taken aback. Yangon confesses he felt he couldn't continue the job and resigned. He expected to encounter them in his dreams, but they never appeared. Maybe they harbor deep resentment toward him. Taemoon suggests they have another drink. They both glance at the empty bottles and realize they've had quite a bit to drink. Yangon stands up and says he's leaving. Taemoon inquires about how he plans to get home now. Yangon replies that he'll take the bus because he wants to sleep in a bed. Taemoon thinks about booking a hotel room for him for the night, but Yangon leaves anyway. As he walks along the sidewalk, he feels overly full and decides to sit on a bench. Due to his excessive drinking, he falls asleep on the bench. A van from a homeless assistance center drives by and stops when they see him lying there. Some workers notice the intoxicated man with both arms injured and decide to bring him in for assistance. They transport him to the Daesan Welfare Society. Yangon experiences a dream. He finds himself in a dark field, and someone is calling his name from behind. He turns around abruptly and spots 2 men in uniforms, both wearing identical pendants. He recognizes them as his fellow juniors from that mission. Suddenly, he notices a gun on the ground near his feet. He picks it up, places it against his head, and says he'll do it if that's what they want. Abruptly, he awakens from his dream, startled by a man clapping near his head to wake him up. Yangon sits up, but his arms still ache. He asks the man who he is and where he is. The man introduces himself as Lee Sunjo and explains that they are at a Daesan welfare facility, and Yangon is wearing inmates' clothing. As Sunjo explains all this, Yangon stands up and heads towards the door. Sunjo asks him where he's going. Yangon halts by the locked door, wondering why it's locked from the inside. Sunjo begins to explain. revealing that this place is where people are forcibly detained. Jonggon is shocked and asks for clarification. Someone calls out to them from behind and questions why they're standing there. Sunjo warns Jonggon that the person is their platoon leader and has a volatile temper, so he should not provoke him. However, Jonggon notices the keys attached to the leader's arm and asks him for the door keys. The leader glares at him angrily. In response, Jangin kicks the leader's leg, causing him to yelp in pain. He considers punching the leader's face, but recalls the doctor's advice not to use his injured arm, so he refrains. Two of the leader's subordinates request permission to teach Jonggon a lesson. The leader orders them to take him to the ward. One of them steps forward to confront Jangin. He contemplates fighting them despite his injured arms, but he remembers Sunjo's warning about the forced imprisonment and the importance of healing his arms to escape. However, he also realizes that his injuries could worsen if he gets hit accidentally, so he faces a dilemma. Simultaneously, Sunjo steps forward and explains to the group that Jangin is new and doesn't know where he is. He suggests giving him a chance and promises to educate him properly. That individual wants Jangin to request forgiveness. Sunju urges him to apologize and admit it was his fault. Jangin, still shocked, lowers his head and apologizes, but the person strikes his head and demands better behavior from him. Then he instructs everyone to prepare for roll call. While seated in a line, Sunju commends Jangin and promises to explain things later. Jangin notices him counting the people and mentions there are 24, including the newcomer. After unlocking the door as they leave, Jonggon inquires about their destination. Sunju responds that they are heading for breakfast. Upon hearing the breakfast name, Jonggon becomes pleased. He observes the surroundings and notes that it resembles a military facility. Although it's not exactly a prison, yet it confines people. What perplexes him most is their reference to it as breakfast. He contemplates using a chopstick to confront the person in charge, but they only provide spoons for eating. While eating, Sunju explains that this place is where they bring in and guide homeless individuals. Jonggon protests, stating he isn't homeless. Sunju clarifies that nobody there is genuinely homeless. This place is where anyone, regardless of their status, is captured and compelled to work. The country provides funding for every homeless person brought here, and welfare agencies imprison people to access that money. Jongin is stunned by this revelation and asks who would subject humans to such treatment. Suddenly, two well-dressed men enter the room. Sunju informs him that these individuals are responsible for these actions. The director's sons. The bespectacled one is Park Gwang, the vice president, while the taller one is Park Yom, the general manager. Jangin suspects they are conducting an inspection. Gwang inquires about the injuries on Jangin's arms. Sunju identifies Jangin as the new inmate who arrived the previous night. Gwang questions whether Jangin can survive on welfare in this manner, to which Sunju assures that he will take good care of him and teach him everything. Gwang appreciates Sunju's efforts and suggests that he aims to be an honor student. Gwang implies that he will remember Sunju's name for future opportunities. Janggon now grasps Sunju's true motives for being so kind to him. Gwang asks Janggon about the food's taste, to which he honestly responds that the food is terrible. Gwang asks him to repeat himself, and Sunju grows concerned because Jonggon is acting out again. Jonggon reiterates that the food isn't fit for humans, as everything in it is spoiled. Gwang lifts the tray and pours it over Jonggon's head, berating him for complaining about the food and smashing the tray on his head. Blood rushes into Jonggon's eyes with anger, but his fractured arms keep him from taking any action. Gwang scolds Sunju, urging him to prevent any more reckless behavior from Jonggon. After they depart, Sunju checks in on Jonggon's well-being. Jonggon, still reeling from the humiliation at breakfast, struggles to clean himself due to his injured arms. Later, he and Sunju engage in their assigned task of sweeping the grounds. Jonggon complains about his clothes not drying properly, fueled by his lingering anger towards Gwang. Sunju reassures him that the clothes will dry quickly in the sun, prompting Jonggon to express relief that Gwang confronted him before bath time, sparing him a prolonged wait. Jongin questions the ethics of mistreating people, finding an unlikely ally in an elderly bald inmate who concurs with the newcomer's sentiments. Intriguingly, the old man's manner of speech is peculiar. Sunju addresses him as Your Excellency and inquires about his presence. Confused, Jongin wonders if the man believes himself to be the president. Another man approaches, referring to the old man as His Excellence and questioning why he is outside. Jonggon seeks an explanation for these unusual references and the presidential demeanor. Sunju clarifies that the man is not impersonating the president but genuinely believes he is the president, his mind scarred by experiences from the Vietnam War. The bald head serves as a haunting reminder of the president, causing him distress. Jonggon sympathizes with the man's unfortunate plight and inquires about Sunju's knowledge. Sunju reveals that the older adult's friend who shared these insights also suffered and eventually succumbed to illness. Jonggon is shocked, questioning if the friend passed away within the facility. Sunju grimly acknowledges that many meet their end here, whether due to injuries, illness, or abuse from staff or the platoon leader. He mentions the platoon leader's earlier threat to send Jangin to the ward, a place where individuals are left to die without treatment. Expressing his disdain for these individuals as bad guys, Jangin's thoughts are interrupted when the platoon leader calls for everyone to gather at the sports field. Sunju informs him that today is an inquiry day, and they are about to witness the worst among the bad guys. All the inmates obediently line up, ready to listen to the facility's director. His name, a melodious echo through the gathering, resonates as Park Injai, a figure of undeniable authority. All heads bow in reverence as Injai steps forward, ready to impart his wisdom. He addresses the diverse array of trees that grace our world, each with its unique purpose, drawing a parallel to humanity's multifaceted existence. He emphasizes the significance of perspective, character, and untapped potential in defining an individual's worth. Yet the individuals standing before him are deemed unworthy, stripped of any redeeming qualities. Injai unflinchingly labels them as twisted and unattractive trees. In an unexpected twist, he likens his role to that of Jesus, assuming the mantle of a carpenter, dedicated to pruning and trimming these seemingly useless trees, sculpting them to discover their hidden value. A reluctant applause follows, coerced from the audience, but not everyone in the room shares the sentiment. Jangin, while feigning attentiveness, finds himself distracted, and his focus drifts towards the facility's layout. He observes that it's nestled into the mountainside, with most of its perimeter secured by imposing walls. The exception is a sheer cliff, where the mountain was cleaved to create an opening. A single imposing gate serves as the lone means of entry or exit, guarded by vigilant sentinels ready to thwart any escape attempt. Janggon acknowledges the inherent difficulty of breaking free with the current circumstances and weaponry at their disposal. As Injai concludes his address, he embraces his sons and expresses gratitude for their dedication to this establishment. The stage is then taken by Guang, who eagerly unveils the identity of the distinguished inmate selected as the honor student, igniting excitement and hope among the residents. Sunju, in particular, holds aspirations of being the chosen one, prompting Jonggon to inquire about the honor student's significance. He learns that this coveted title signifies the person chosen to be released from the welfare facility. Amidst a hushed crowd, Guang reveals that Kwok Du-yong has been chosen as the fortunate soul this time. Du-yong steps forward to express his heartfelt appreciation, overjoyed at the prospect of returning home. He is subsequently escorted to the staff office, where queries about his departure date linger in his mind. Guang assures him that a final health check by the doctor is a necessary formality before departure. Shortly thereafter, the doctor conducts a thorough examination, pronouncing Du-yong fit for life beyond these walls, administering an injection billed as a vital nutrient for his continued well-being. In a peculiar twist, Du-yong succumbs to unconsciousness, prompting two attendants to transfer him outside at Guang's behest. The suggestion arises to strip him of his newcomer's attire, a practical measure to save costs. The doctor, however, finds this proposal astonishing, admonishing the focus on thriftiness in such dire circumstances. Guang, with an air of authority, counters that he's not one to squander his resources like the doctor, who gambled away his wealth and now toils under Guang's command. The doctor receives a stern warning to know his place if he desires self-preservation. Meanwhile, Du-yong awakens in an operating theater room, disoriented about his surroundings. The doctor reassures him that they are conducting an examination and urges him not to be afraid. Du-yong, however, reacts with a punch to the doctor's face and makes a daring escape. The commotion attracts the attention of the general manager, who administers his own brand of punishment, forcibly escorting Du-yong to the operating theater and sealing the door. Meanwhile, Tae-moon and his informant sit discreetly in the corner of a dimly lit restaurant, engaged in secretive deliberations. In the dimly lit room, a mysterious figure leaned in closer to Tae-moon, bearing news that would send ripples through their underworld organization. Guan-ho and his loyal henchmen, the backbone of their operation, were currently confined to hospital beds, rendering their criminal empire temporarily paralyzed. The informant whispered this unsettling revelation to Tae-moon, who couldn't help but let out a nervous chuckle, placing his half-finished bowl of food on the table. "Looks like Congressman Choi's office decided to grant us an unexpected gift," Tae-moon remarked with a sly grin, his laughter growing louder as he contemplated the sudden turn of events. But there was something unsettling about this swift turn of fortune. The informant leaned in even closer, his voice hushed as he shared a disconcerting detail. Taemoon, somehow Choi's office seems to know everything already. They've made their decision within a single day. Taemoon, never one to underestimate his political adversaries, nodded in agreement. Choi is indeed a clever old fox. His wit and rapid decision-making have earned him a seat in the parliament. The informant, now emboldened by the news, proposed a celebratory gesture. Perhaps, if you don't mind, you could be the one to cut the ribbon and mark the grand opening of the slot machine business, he suggested. As they savored their fried dumplings, Taemoon's mind drifted to a different place and time. He remembered a moment when Jongin, a trusted associate, had inquired about the specialty of the restaurant they were dining in. Taemoon smiled, acknowledging the thought, and spoke warmly. These fried dumplings are truly exceptional. However, concern crept into his thoughts as he wondered whether Jongin had returned home safely, especially considering his recent arm injury. Meanwhile, in another location, Jongin found himself engaged in a rather mundane task, capping shower bottles at the welfare facility. His colleague Sunju had yet to inquire about his name, prompting Jangin to introduce himself. "I'm Jangin," he replied succinctly. Curiosity piqued, Sunju probed further. "What kind of work did you used to do outside?" Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Theonikil being 9317 who commented, "I am confused, why would people died on their native world can go back original world after being sent to another world? Sound like recipe for chaos. Seem like to me the divine beings are either very reckless or don't give a crap, which explains a lot on our hero. Has returned video, really good commentary there. You prove a lot of great points." Jangin reflected for a moment, his mind going back to the fateful day when an altercation led to his arm injury. "I used to take on physical labor," he admitted. The platoon commander, suddenly appearing on the scene, interrupted their conversation, clearly displeased with their idle chatter during work hours. Sunju quickly offered apologies, fearing the commander's wrath. The platoon commander then turned his attention to Jangin, asking a question that ignited a spark of frustration within Jongin. "What did you do in front of the vice president?" he demanded. Before Jangin could respond, the commander swiftly changed tack, instructing him to forget the question and to be more cautious in the future. Jangin remained silent, prompting the commander to resort to more forceful methods. A sharp blow to the head left Jangin with no choice but to answer in the affirmative. As he glanced at the keys dangling from his injured arms, Jangin couldn't help but ask Sunju about the peculiar way the barracks doors were locked from the inside. It seemed counterintuitive, especially for a place meant to provide shelter and security. Sunju explained that, long ago, during an inspection, someone had deemed it inappropriate to lock the doors from the outside, as it resembled a prison. Since then, the doors had been locked from within, creating an unconventional security measure. He adds with a tone of revelation that the selection of commanders in their current predicament was rather unconventional. These individuals held no authority beyond the confines of their newfound roles. Consequently, they became consumed by the intoxicating allure of their newfound power, showing little regard for the fact that they were essentially detainees. Jongin, now fully comprehending the entire situation, exchanges a few words with Sunju. In the midst of their conversation, Sunju confesses to feeling a tinge of envy, contemplating how the person they're discussing has likely already returned home, while they remain stuck in their present predicament. In a moment fraught with tension, the doctor solemnly passes the organ box to the general manager, urging him to maintain absolute silence regarding the earlier incident when dealing with the vice president. However, things take a sudden, violent turn as the aforementioned individual fixes a steely gaze upon the doctor, launching a swift and forceful kick into his abdomen. With a stern tone, he instructs the doctor to summon the vice president and implores him to acknowledge his own errors and engage in introspection. Before departing, he nonchalantly tosses an envelope filled with money onto the ground in front of the doctor, leaving him in a daze. All feelings of pain and guilt momentarily evaporate as the doctor's eyes fixate on the envelope, his thoughts drifting toward the successful gambling venture he may partake in later. With the box now in the possession of the smugglers, they compensate the general manager with a generous sum. He promptly returns to his father, handing over the entirety of the earned money. Injae, his father, applauds his efforts and advises him to rest, understanding the likely difficulties involved in transporting the box. Afterward, the general manager secures the newfound wealth in a wallet brimming with cash, carefully locking it away. As the night falls, everyone settles down, preparing to rise early the following morning. As Jongin arranges his sleeping area, he reflects on the 4 days he has spent in this environment. Drawing from the resilience forged during his intensive training in his prior career, he's managed to adapt to this challenging new life. One aspect, however, continues to baffle him: the quality of the food. Nevertheless, with his arm still on the mend, he resigns himself to this situation, mentally positioning it as an operation for survival. Intriguingly, he considers that just a few days ago, he faced life-threatening missions with unwavering fearlessness. Now, he's consumed by a singular worry, the inability to see Shiona during lunch breaks. The nagging thought of her possibly forgetting him begins to weigh heavily on his mind. Meanwhile, Shiona also gazes longingly at the door, anticipating his return. Her concerned colleague encourages her to join them for lunch, but her thoughts are fixated on why he hasn't appeared in several days. When he departed, he promised to return with money, leaving her hoping for his well-being and fearing he may have encountered an accident. The platoon leader, growing impatient with Jongen's slow pace of work, resorts to a slap. However, an older man intervenes, vowing to make up for the delay but refusing to inflict harm, considering Jongen's injuries. This act of compassion incurs the wrath of the platoon commander, who accuses the older man of playing favorites and questions his sanity. In a fit of rage, the platoon commander strikes the older man, prompting Jongen's fury to simmer. Unable to bear the older man's pain, Jongen rises, calling out the platoon leader in a fit of anger. The room falls silent in response to his audacity. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.